Okay, let's unpack this. We are embarking on a deep dive today into one of the most concentrated ancient sources of wisdom available, Proverbs chapter 16.
Mm,
It's a fast paced, powerful masterclass in how to actually live well.
that's absolutely right. The source material we have is a tremendous deep dive itself, a verse-by-verse look at this one chapter, which, it sits right in the heart of what's often called Solomonic wisdom.
Like ancient life coaching.
Exactly. Delivered in these precise two-line packages.
Our mission today is to grab those packages, sort of shake them up, and quickly distill the most profound, applicable insights. We're looking for the blueprint on, personal conduct, how to avoid self-deception,
Right.
and what the foundation of effective righteous leadership really is. I think we need to walk away with clear, actionable principles for living.
And that framing is so critical. When we discuss Proverbs, we aren't dealing with universal theological absolutes like
Yeah.
God created the heavens and the earth.
Yeah.
Instead, these are general principles of wisdom. They describe how the world usually works, how it is, designed to function when aligned with divine intention. They're essential guides, but we need to hold them with that understanding. They describe norms, not unbreakable laws.
Let's jump right into the first great tension in life, which I call the inner GPS, this constant duality between our planning and divine oversight. The chapter hits us with this immediately.
Right away, in verses 1 and 9.
Verse 1 says, "The preparations of the heart belong to man, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord."
It perfectly captures that paradox of human agency. We are planners. I mean, it's part of being made in God's image. We reflect His order and His forethought. So, we prepare, we structure meetings, we write speeches.
But that answer of the tongue, that's the wild card. I'm thinking of
Mm,
those times when you're forced into a tough conversation and the perfect wise thing it just comes out.
yes.
You didn't rehearse it, you didn't plan it, and yet it felt completely right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The source commentary points this out, that true, wise, effective communication transcends our pre-written script. It's like the promise Jesus gave His disciples, don't worry about what you're going to say.
Because it will be given to you in that hour.
Right? It's the highest form of preparedness, being prepared enough to allow wisdom to speak through you.
But wait, doesn't relying on spontaneous guidance doesn't that become an excuse for poor planning? Where do we draw that line?
And that's where the companion verse comes in. The other cornerstone of this inner GPS.
Okay.
We have to plan, but with humility. The proverb reminds us, a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. You do the necessary work, you make the blueprint, but you surrender the outcome.
So you can't just sit back.
No. The insight here is so profound. Even your best laid plans exist under a divine umbrella. You can't step outside the government of God whether your plans are good or, ill.
That makes the work less about controlling the future and more about aligning our efforts with a larger, unseen direction.
Precisely. We are called to be diligent planners, but surrendered servants.
But the instant we start planning, we run into the biggest internal obstacle, right? The ego. This is where Proverbs 16.2 really cuts deep. It sounds almost like modern psychology. All the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes,
Yes.
but the Lord weighs the spirits. That instinct to self-justify is just universal. We are experts at writing narratives where we are the hero.
We are. And that self-deception is maybe the greatest danger the chapter identifies.
Yeah.
The scholarship on this text gives us this chilling observation
Such as?
that even the most criminal, the most violent people in history, they've been able to construct these elaborate narratives where they were justified or even pure in their own eyes.
That's a staggering thought. If the worst of humanity can convince themselves they are righteous, what hope do the rest of us have against our own blindness? We're constantly giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt.
It just shows the power of the human heart to manufacture self-righteousness.
Yeah.
As one brilliant commentator, Spurgeon, observed, self-righteousness flourishes best where there appears to be the least soil for it.
Wow.
Often, the people most convinced of their virtue are the ones who have the least foundation for it. We need an external check.
And the check is immediate. But the Lord weighs the spirits. He's the final arbiter.
God is the accurate, fair, objective measurer of human life. He weighs the internal motivation, the spirit, not just the external action that we're so quick to justify.
So if we accept that we're fundamentally flawed and, prone to self-deception, what is the active, deliberate antidote? That leads us straight into the command of commitment.
Yes.
Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established.
The Hebrew word for commit here is so vivid. It literally means to roll upon or roll it unto the Lord and leave it there. It's a command to physically transfer the burden.
The anxiety, the control.
All of it. You entrust it to him, making it his business.
Yeah. What I find so compelling is the surprising order. We usually think, establish the plans first, the thoughts, then work, then commit. But the text flips that script.
It does.
It says surrender the works first, and then your thoughts, your plans will be established and secured. It's a call to dependence that comes before security.
Exactly. The security doesn't come from our perfect planning. It comes from the surrender of our work. Once the work is rolled over to him, our plans finally find the security that only God can provide.
Speaking of security and God's ultimate plan, let's pivot to a heavy theological statement in the next section about God's sovereignty and the abomination of pride. Verse 4 is profound. The Lord has made all for himself, yes, even the wicked, for the day of doom.
It's a challenging claim.
It is.
It is a strong assertion of God's absolute final authority over all creation. The synthesis of this verse suggests there are ultimately no loose ends in God's world.
Yeah.
Everything, even the existence of evil, will ultimately be put to use and matched with its proper fate.
It definitely requires careful handling because you don't want people to jump to the conclusion that God, actively creates people for damnation.
And the classic interpretation rejects that reading. The insight is that God's plan includes the destiny of the wicked doom, which is the course they have freely chosen and deserved. God is not the author of their evil.
He just includes their self-chosen destiny within his final government.
Precisely.
That sets the stage for the consequence of resisting that governance, which is pride. Verse 5 is unambiguous. Everyone proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord.
One of the strongest condemnations in the entire book.
It really is.
It underscores that the proud heart imitates Satan's original rebellion against God's authority, and the defiance is always futile. The verse warns, though they join forces, none will go unpunished.
You can gather all your powerful friends, build your towers of Babel.
But collective pride still falls under God's judgment.
And that theme is so critical. It's repeated later in the chapter, almost for emphasis. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Why the double warning?
The ancient Hebrew writers often used repetition to amplify a truth. It's like putting it in all caps. The haughty spirit is just a further description of the proud heart. It's the internal attitude of superiority made visible.
Right.
And when God is so fundamentally opposed to that attitude, destruction isn't just possible, it's inevitable. It's structural damage just waiting to happen.
So the antidote to that destruction is found immediately in the contrasting verse. Better to be of a humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud.
It's an economic statement, really. The vast financial rewards gained through proud, self-serving schemes are fundamentally less valuable than the peace and stability that comes from humble association. Proud people are, in the end, miserable company.
And wisdom says we should avoid joining those God actively resists. This brings us to a beautiful anomaly in the chapter, verse 6, which is one of the few three-line sayings in this section, and it deals with atonement. In mercy and truth, atonement is provided for iniquity.
This needs careful clarification, because the common misreading is that our mercy and our truth somehow balance out our sin. That is not the message. The deep scholarship clarifies that this atonement is provided entirely by God's mercy.
Which prompted the sacrifice.
And God's truth, which made the atoning sacrifice necessary to uphold his perfect righteousness.
So the provision is wholly initiated by God in response to our sin and pride. And when that atonement is received, the result is clear. By the fear of the Lord, one departs from evil.
The fear of the Lord is often presented as the beginning of wisdom, but here we see it as the ongoing foundation of a God-honoring life. When you truly grasp the magnitude of God's provision, it shifts your posture from defiance to reverence.
And that leads us away from wickedness.
Progressively.
That reverence leads us straight into part 3, the value comparison. What is truly valuable in life? We start with the principle of peace in verse 7. When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him.
That's the default setting. A lifestyle that genuinely pleases God often has the side effect of, disarming social hostility. When you operate with integrity, enemies often retreat, or at least they can't sustain their aggression.
But this is where we have to remember our intro point about these being general principles.
Not absolute laws.
Right, because we have the ultimate counterexample in history.
Exactly. Jesus pleased the Lord in every single way, yet faced the ultimate hostility and death. The proverb is still true. A righteous life tends toward peace. but it doesn't guarantee a life free of persecution.
It guarantees that internally you are living rightly, and that's a valuable trade-off.
A very valuable one.
We see the value comparison again in verse 8. Better is a little with righteousness than vast revenues without justice. This is a profound ethical comparison for any business owner or employee listening.
It is. Think about the historical contrast. The poor widow who had little but righteousness versus Queen Jezebel, who had vast revenues but practiced rank injustice.
The widow had it better.
The wisdom of Proverbs is unequivocal. The person with little who is righteous is living a better, more secure life. Vast revenues gained unjustly can never buy a peaceful conscience.
And this elevates the pursuit of wisdom above wealth, definitively, in verse 16. How much better to get wisdom than gold?
And to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. Wisdom is simply the more useful asset. It's useful in this life, helping you navigate complex situations, and infinitely more profitable in the life to come.
And we see this with Solomon himself.
Right. He asked for wisdom, and wealth was given as a bonus. It proves they aren't incompatible, but if you're forced to choose, wisdom is the superior, necessary choice.
Let's transition now to leadership part 4, because Proverbs 16 dedicates a lot of space to the responsibilities of those in power. Verse 10 starts with a concept that sounds ancient. Divination is on the lips of the king.
That's a tricky translation for modern ears. The word doesn't mean seeking the occult or magic.
Okay.
In this context, the deep scholarship suggests it just means wise guidance. The king's pronouncement should be like an oracle, filled with discernment and wisdom.
But immediately, his authority is restricted. The next line says, his mouth must not transgress in judgment.
This is the powerful anti-authoritarian statement. The later European idea of the divine right of kings, that the king can do no wrong, is emphatically not a biblical concept.
The king is a man under God's authority.
Yes, it is an abomination for kings to commit wickedness, precisely because a throne is meant to be established by righteousness. Righteousness is the bedrock that invites God's blessing and security.
And if righteousness is the foundation, what's the most valuable currency for a leader? Truth, verse 13. Righteous lips are the delight of kings.
And they love him who speaks what is right. True leaders don't just want flattery, they need truth, even if it's difficult. One Puritan commentator described how most princes are held by their parasites who soothe them up in their sins with smooth words.
The wisdom here is that speaking the honest, righteous truth, even if it's hard, ultimately earns more love and respect from a real leader than constant flattery.
Absolutely.
And this need for justice extends beyond the king's personal temperament and into the very structure of the economy, right? Verse 11 insists that honest weights and scales are the Lord's.
That's the foundation of fair dealing. Justice is derived from God, not invented by man. The king can't just suspend or violate fairness in the marketplace.
It's divinely established.
It is, whether you're selling grain or signing a contract.
We also address the dual nature of authority, wrath and favor. Verse 14 is a sharp reminder. As messengers of death is the king's wrath.
It creates fear, and rightly so, especially when we consider the King of Kings. To fall under divine wrath is to receive messengers of death. The wise response is to appease it.
Which ultimately means receiving the provision God made in Jesus.
In the ultimate sense, yes.
And in stark contrast is favor. Verse 15. In the light of the king's face is life, and his favor is like a cloud of the latter rain. That imagery is beautiful.
It symbolizes vital, life-giving approval. The latter rain was the last bit of moisture on which the essential cereal harvest depended. If you didn't get that rain, your year was ruined.
So his favor is essential.
It's the vital support you need to thrive.
Now, for the final set of principles, wisdom, and practice applied to daily life, we have to return to the danger of self-deception one last time in 16.25, a verse so crucial it appears twice in Proverbs.
Yes.
There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death.
That repetition is a flashing neon warning sign. It tells us that what feels intuitively right or emotionally comfortable is often the most dangerous path. The path of self-deception doesn't lead to a temporary inconvenience. Its ultimate end is spiritual death.
The righteous path, conversely, is clear and simple. The highway of the upright is to depart from evil, a deliberate turning away.
And that departure from evil starts with self-mastery, which includes the power of our words. On the positive side, 16.24. Pleasant words are like a honeycomb.
Sweetness to the soul and health to the bones. That is such a visceral analogy.
It really is.
Pleasant words don't just feel good, they impart strength and brightness, like that ancient anecdote of Jonathan eating honeycomb and feeling his eyes brighten. They have a physical, uplifting effect.
But the negative side shows the devastating power of speech. A perverse man sows strife, and a whisperer separates the best of friends.
Gossipy, twisted words are like a spiritual acid.
Yes. Capable of destroying even the strongest, most enduring bonds between people. It's an act of spiritual terrorism.
Before we hit the ultimate wisdom point, let's look quickly at the value of labor in 16.26. The person who labors for himself, for his hungry mouth, drives him on.
This is a foundational economic and moral principle. It supports personal property and asserts that the reward of work belongs to the worker. It's a statement against any system that unfairly confiscates labor or forces communal living.
And the driver is innate. Hunger.
Right. As one commentator noted, hunger will make a man work when perhaps nothing else will. It's the primary necessary motivator for human contribution.
Okay, now, let's land on the ultimate measure of valor, the final battleground of self-control. This is the verse everyone quotes, 16.32.
That's a classic.
He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city.
This flips the entire idea of heroism on its head. Who is the true conqueror? Is it the one who defeats external enemies, or the one who defeats his own nature?
We see this played out tragically in history. I mean, think of Alexander the Great. He conquered the known world, achieving unsurpassed external glory. Yet he was a slave to his own passions. In a fit of rage and drunkenness, he killed his most loyal friend, Sidus.
He conquered cities.
But he could not conquer the man in the mirror.
That's the perfect illustration. The wisdom here is that self-mastery requires more valor than external military might. A Puritan named Matthew P. identified 3 reasons ruling your spirit is superior. First, you conquer a stronger enemy. The self is harder to subdue than any external army. Second, you conquer by your own hands through internal discipline. And third, you conquer without the injury and ruin of others.
It requires singular, continuous heroism.
It does.
That reframes so many of our modern priorities. We focus so much energy on conquering the external city, the career promotion, the perfect body, the financial goal, when the internal battle is the one that actually defines us.
It does. And finally, Proverbs 16 ends with a comforting reminder that even when things seem random, there is still governance. Verse 33, the lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord.
Casting the lot, which is like rolling dice, was a legitimate way to make decisions in the biblical era, used for everything from dividing land to selecting a new apostle.
And the takeaway is profound. Even in moments that appear governed by sheer chance or randomness, when we commit our path to God, He directs the outcome. He is sovereign over the seeming chaos.
This deep dive into Proverbs 16 has offered a clear, concise blueprint for character and informed living today. Planning, pride, justice, the righteous life. It's truly a shortcut to wisdom.
And as the source materials suggest, this ancient wisdom is actually a perfect anticipation of the ultimate wisdom found in Jesus Christ. We saw 2 huge connection points.
Right.
First, the atonement in verse 6. Jesus provided the great, final sacrifice at Calvary, fulfilling that provision first described as being from God's mercy and truth.
And second, the foundation of leadership and eternal rule, defined in verse 12. The chapter insisted a throne is only established by righteousness.
And Jesus is the King of Kings, and the ultimate foundation of his eternal reign is exactly that. Righteousness and justice, as the psalmist confirms. His future, visible, complete rule will be one of utter, perfect righteousness.
So here is the final provocative thought for you to mull over as you walk through your week. If God's wisdom is clear that self-control is superior to conquering a city, superior to external, visible achievement, what is the city in your life right now? What is that external thing you are relentlessly focused on conquering or achieving that pales in comparison to the essential internal battle of ruling your own spirit? The text suggests that internal vice requires the most valor and heroism from you today. We'll leave you to wrestle with that priority shift.